The following is an experiment. There hasn't been much of an update on Indie Film TO for almost a year, and it's been sporadic for almost 2 years. And the reason is I was working on a documentary called Better Left Unsaid, which is actually now released. And you can go to the YouTube link in the description if you want to watch a trailer or buy it at one of the links below. It's a political documentary about when does the left go too far and so on and so on. You can view it below. Regardless, that's not the point. The point is I would like to produce more content for Indie Film TO. However, I, Kurt Jaimungal, have been the face of Indie Film TO, and in some ways that's held it back because it would be great to have other people help produce some content for it. Then we decided, how about we get other luminaries in the Toronto independent film industry to be hosts for the Indie Film TO podcast and focus on film funding. This way, they can ask the questions that you have the desire of knowing the answers to. So, for example, how do you get film funding? How do you fill out a grant application? How do you stand out as a producer? How do you stand out as someone to be given money to? Because most likely you feel like you're just a nobody in the sea of maybe 10,000 or 100,000 other filmmakers much like yourself. That means that this time it's an experiment with Virginia Kingston. She's a Toronto actress, producer, and much more, who's interviewing Anneli Ekborn, who herself is an established Toronto producer and many more accolades that I can't list. Anneli is someone who has much wisdom to dispense, so Virginia is interrogating her essentially. Let us know what you think about this format where it's pretty much me introducing a podcast and then you hearing the podcast from other hosts that aren't necessarily I. Please, again, go easy on Virginia as this is our first time with this experiment. There may be technical issues or other issues. Either way, let Virginia, let Anneli know how much you like them, how much you love them, what you like to see more of, and enjoy.
So, welcome to Indie Film TO's podcast, Anneli. Thank you for joining us today. Absolutely. So today we have Anneli Ekborn. She is of Swedish descent, born in England. She's a multi-award-winning filmmaker and producer. She's done over 3 feature films, over 15 short films. She obtained her BFA from Simon Fraser University, and she is an alumni of CFC in 3 different areas: features, shorts, and also the Cineplex Entertainment Program. As well, she's a Screen Institute alumni. In her spare time, she freelances with Toronto International Film Festival as a workshop leader for Youth in Film. So, wow, that's very impressive. Thank you for joining us today and sharing with us your experiences.
That's a lot of homework. I've forgotten about most of those, but yeah, they're all amazing and close to my heart. Thank you for having me again.
Definitely. And what the climate today is very different, obviously, for everyone. And I just wanted to know what projects you're working on currently.
Well, excuse me. Right now, I'm lucky. I'm only in development on development's a big deal. But there are 2 feature films that I'm focusing on, and one is this fantastical family comedy, and then the other is sort of like a very different psychological drama that focuses on mental health. It's interesting to have them both going at once. Mm-hmm. So, I've been working on those 2. And when I say development, I mean, we've been working with the writers. We've been putting in applications. We've been really thriving towards kind of how we're going to position it when it hits the screen, because, as you mentioned, COVID kind of gets in the way a little bit. But now has been a good time for development. In addition to that, I'm working on an animated feature that
Wow.
I've been doing, which is really fun, and I've got some good connections that are helping me out with moving that forward. But I can't say too much about any of them, because it's still early stages. But I guess just been keeping busy.
Definitely. And with the current climate today, how has that impacted your projects, whether it's the themes of what you're working with or the workflow flow of it or the end result of it?
Yeah. I think that's a very good question because, okay, since I'm not on set right now, not in production, um, it hasn't really changed kind of what I need to do during development, but what I have recognized is just how it's changed a lot of things. I would say, mentally almost. I think that people are all dealing with COVID and in their own ways. And what's interesting is that everything we're, including myself, a little bit sluggish. We're still thoughtful, but it's not like that go to every day. Because I don't have my office here where I've got all these people that inspire me to come on, we're working, but we all have to be separated. So it's hard, like working remotely through development is difficult. What I know from my friends that are working in the industry on sets is that I guess, they get, it's not slowing down the set too much. It's probably making some budgets a little bit more difficult because, of course you get tested and it should be safety first always. So that slows things down and the morale drops a little bit here and there. But in my case, like I said, it's just, we have to just be very conscious about how other people may be feeling at this time. So it's just awareness.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that people that awareness hopefully will carry into when things do open up because I think that that's a really good I think that's a positive that has come out of this.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I agree with you. I just want to make sure that I know what you mean. I think if what you're saying is sort of, it's very, very important for us to, in general, sort of have those procedures to make sets healthy or healthier and to be like conscious of not just disease, but who else knows what's going on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and also checking in with people's mental health. I think this is a new
Couldn't agree more. And it's hard to say that without sounding kind of a little bit grateful for like this learning experience because there's so much suffering going on. But I do think it is an eye opener for the film industry to take all of those things very, very seriously. And for producers, like it should be in our budgets and things like that are much more important than a movie.
definitely. And is there one habit or a skill that you have cultivated that has helped you as a producer and also in these times particularly?
Should this be like a professional one or like a personal sort of?
Whatever you prefer, because I do think the two are related.
You may laugh at this. Welcome to. I have this thing every morning with my iPhone. I need to win a game of euchre before, and just not like with bets or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It's just like a silly game on the computer, a card game. And then once that has happened, I'm like, okay, time to get on the phone.
Ready? Yeah, I love that. So you have it. you have a win right off the bat.
That's the idea. But it
That's
is funny. And then, there's some courage that you get. Like I live alone. So like normally it would be, I would make my partner a wonderful breakfast. But that's not possible. So I'm like, all right, you cook.
Yeah. No, there's something to be said for that, for you get that hit of, okay, I got this, and then you take that with you
And
into
then
what you're doing.
returning all the emails,
Mhm.
and then just reviewing all material and keeping on track of things. And then at the end of the day, that's when I go back to doing a bit of writing for myself.
So your creative period happens more after the business tasks are taken care of.
Yeah, generally, I would say so. Because can you imagine? I'd just be distracted all day, writing about
Yes.
clouds. That's what it's
Yes.
called. So yeah,
That's what your project is called?
yeah.
Ah,
I'll
fantastic.
leave that to your imagination.
Okay. And similar to that, for what do you think is a quality that is a really good quality for especially independent producers to possess in order to be able to tackle this incredibly complex industry?
Well, should I name three?
If you like, yeah, or more.
I could go for a while. But like I'm still figuring things out myself. However, I would, perseverance,
Hmm.
I think is a big one. I'll expand on that in a second. I think patience, um, is a big one. And then I think, like in general, like if anything that this has taught us is that we can't really do anything alone. So I would say embracing collaboration. Should I keep going? No.
If you wish, yes. Yeah.
But, like perseverance, because like we are stuck in a weird situation, and then also like this kind of, if I may say, like it parallels to, it's difficult, not just in this situation, it's difficult in this industry in general. And if we're talking about film finance and funding, it's hard. You can't assume that funding is right there for you. And you can't get disgruntled or dismayed, I guess, when you get a rejection. And in my experience, I've seen people, and I've even been one of those people that just, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But you keep going, it's going to be okay. And you figure out what sort of things you may have done wrong, or what sort of things maybe they weren't looking for, or what things that they are looking for. So it's work. It's a lot of work, and patience, I guess, kind of relates to that too. Um, I think, patience even just applies to things that happen on set even. As a producer, you can't be a hothead. You shouldn't. Well, or maybe you should. I don't like being a hothead.
Right.
But you know, you show that vulnerability, and suddenly your crew and your cast are like, oh my gosh, if this leader of the ship is like losing it, then everyone else starts to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being patient and listening very, very well to what your crew is saying. And then also patience, again, applies to finance. Don't just expect it, work for it. And And then in terms of collaboration, again, not one person can run a ship. So you need everyone on board. And when you collaborate with people, and everyone knows that they're making this movie together, it's not one person's movie. I think it's really helpful. So yeah, to me, those are the things that confirm to me that it's going to be a good project when you've got that feeling of collaboration and you behave with perseverance and also with patience. But collaboration is huge. I mean, everyone has opinions. They should be heard, right? As actors or production designers, DOPs, direct, like all of that it has to be in one room or in one Zoom. That's so bad.
A poet. Definitely. I mean, patience, perseverance, and collaboration are three incredible core values to being a really successful and also, I think, empathetic leader.
Hey, good call. I'm going to actually write that down. Yes. Empathy. Yes, of course. Of course.
And do you have something that you do when you experience rejection in terms of financial, or do you have a process that helps you to move through that feeling into, when you want to give up, and is there something that you do that helps you to move through that so that you come out the other side and fill out more forms and try again?
Rejection just makes me want to work even harder. Let's not tell that to all the
So you use it as fuel.
I've always had, you can include it, it's fine. But I've always had this thing, my family's always said this about me. They're like, the second we say no to you about something, you just do it. So it's almost empowering. In terms of a process, yeah, like it takes a while because there are other people that you have to tell, okay, so that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, all these people are sort of looking at you, wondering like, all right, we're going to do this, right? Like, well, we can get this in place. But yeah, but now I'm going to create a plan because, in general, this crew that you were collaborating with are looking to you to sort of, okay, have a plan and not walk away. I'm a bad walk away. So like for me, it's the process is just be completely transparent with the crew and with the creative team about what's happened, and then pull in and hopefully I have a co-producer, which most of the time I do. It's so much better. Two people are better than one.
Definitely, yeah. It's really helpful to have someone to be able to check in with and to share the disappointments so that you can prop each other up.
Like honestly, you can't. There's no one else to really talk to because you can't go full on with okay, the movie is like not happening just for a second. Even if you're feeling that way, but if you've got a co-producer, then that person to lean on, or that second person in general, you can just have your vent session with them and be like, yes, we're going to bring it back.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that. So the feeling the feelings and then moving through it and coming back even stronger. And on that note, what has your experience been with applying for funding recently, and because the landscape has changed, and there are tons of opportunities, but the parameters have changed, and so can you speak to that?
Absolutely, Virginia. Well, you have good timing. Most recently, we put in applications to Telefilm, to Ontario Creates, and also now we're preparing for the Shaw's Rocket Fund and also TELUS. In terms of the experience, I will say, and let's shout out or just a little nudge to emerging producers. It is hard because right now we used to do like a lot of funding and meetings and explaining things, but obviously we're not doing that anymore, which is okay. So instead, all of these funding agencies, and they are probably run ragged. So I have to give a shout out to them for like still working super hard to even look at, to have the time to look at the material. I know they don't have a lot of staff, but what I will say is to those junior producers, the porthole that they have created is complicated, but don't let it scare you. So it even scared me. Now, here's another case where if I didn't have a co-producer that was very versed in how to go online and like enter it, but it's a very, very complicated system these days.
Mm-hmm.
But it is achievable. And when you're applying for the funding, especially the government funding, which are the ones that I've mentioned, we can talk about other financing, in a bit. But yeah, you'll find it will feel very difficult to navigate, but the people that have created are still going to be very supportive of you. But the biggest secret is really to have all your ducks in a row and do all of your research ahead of time and know exactly what kind of documents they want, correct them, look at what kind of interviews they've been doing in the past, make sure that yours is in line with that, or if you've got a different one, then look at that. But really, it's just to get through stage one, it's just make sure that you've organized yourself and your documents so that when they go to the portal and look at you, there's nothing missing. I mean, if there's nothing missing, then it will get to the next stage.
Definitely. So dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's,
Exactly.
organizing your materials, having everything.
Yeah, and it's not my favorite part of the job, but it turns out to be helpful if you get it done because you can definitely use that later.
That's true.
That's been my experience so far, and I think I may have made an error on one of the most recent applications, and it gets sent back to us. So then we have to fix that or figure out what to fix. So I think being super thorough is very, very good. And also, if you are confused about something, definitely phone them, but make sure that you've read everything. Because all of the finance, like they don't have time to take desperate calls from people at the last minute. That's another thing that I'm going to mention, just because I think we'll probably segue into the junior producer area. Just make sure that you have looked at everything and do not submit an hour before the deadline.
Yes. Procrastination is not your friend.
Well,
in these experiences for these
I know.
forms.
Well, sometimes I'm like, is it procrastination or like perfection? But no one, no one likes having a pile like show up 2 minutes before deadline, and then they have to deal with it. What the funders are going to want to see too is just that you follow your project and you got it in a little bit early, and you appreciate their time. So it's not just like, now look.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yes, I do think that just even for the producer, from a producer's point of view, for your own sanity, I think it's a good thing to do. And then on the receiving end, I'm sure that they do appreciate it, like you said, instead of getting a flood of applications.
Especially ones that are not completely filled out. Yeah, no, it keeps
Yeah.
everyone's blood pressure down.
If you could, we sort of talked about it a little bit, but one question that I had was, can you think back to a time where you said no to an opportunity and you really hemmed and hawed about it, and then when the moment passed and you look back, you realize, oh, that was good that I said no to that.
Okay, so an opportunity or just like something that I was in charge of, like for on set or for one of my films or for myself.
On set, on films, yeah, I think that would be a good starting point.
Well, okay. I say no to helicopter shots all the time. And believe it or not, people do ask for them. But there was, well, this is similar. It still involves height. There was one script that we were good to go on, and the DOP and the director really wanted like this massive crane shot. And this is a super low budget. I think this is for one of the shorts. Yeah, it was. But I was like, okay. I did say no. I was like, because they have to come to me to approve that. And like, it wasn't even about money. I thought about the time it would take to set up that shot. Like that's a quarter of a day. And then we think about how many crew members we would need to like be involved with that. And then I looked even closer, and I knew the script in and out. That's like part of a producer's role. You should know everything. You're the one there from birth to like the very, very end. So I looked at the script and I'm like, it's an intimate scene. So I'm not sure why we want to do it from over there. And I completely understood the cinematic value. Like it's nice when you see that. But we're talking about it taking up a couple of days, probably are missing like this emotional element. Yeah, and I said no. I was not everyone's favorite person that day. Yeah, so there's one example. It is hard to say no. It's very hard to say no. But, and part of it too, safety came into it. And yeah, there was another way to do it. There's always another way. And this brings it, kind of loops me back into, or circles me back to the collaboration thing. So, if we can have a conversation about how to make it work in a different way, and then everyone understands and wants to make it work together, and we all understand each other's limitations to an extent, that that is helpful. It did get to that point, so that was good. But I felt okay about that decision, even though I was in the doghouse.
You were in the doghouse, but you knew that ultimately it was the right doghouse to be in.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important to underline, is that it is a good thing to know what people's limitations are, or maybe not necessarily people, but or limitations of the budget or limitations of the time frame. And I think that that's also what your role is, to understand the limitations.
Well, may I interject and
Yes.
probably agree with you? But
Mm.
no, one thing, even when I was teaching, I would teach my students, the producer students, that as a producer, it's your job to really understand everyone else's role. So that when they talk to you about what they need, um, you can think about whether, don't look at the numbers. You think about if they need that or not, because you understand their role. And you can language. Um, and then, like, I've had that before where, like, sometimes DOP would ask for, like, oh, I need this and this and this for that shot. This is not the crane example. And I was like, no, you don't, because you can just use a slider. And like, I've looked at the storyboards, but I think it's very, very important to know what everyone is responsible, especially if you're going to be their boss, you should understand what their world is like, so that you can speak the same language and then say yes when you're like, okay, I totally get that. Or say no when, no, we can't really do that. Um, yeah, I know that sounds a little cryptic, but I do. I mean, I've worked as a gaffer, I've worked as a grip, I've worked in the art department, and this is just coming up, right? Before I started producing. I've worked as a director, and all of those things give you a sense of what other, what every department needs. The only one that I was completely awful with was supervision.
Sorry, can you repeat that? The only one that.
What I was completely horrible with was learning how to script supervise, like continuity.
Oh, that is so difficult. It's so difficult. That my hat goes off to script supervisors. They're geniuses.
Like for me, my like script supervisors that I've worked with, I'm like, okay, now you're my boss.
Exactly. I feel like they could easily segue from that to running everything.
I know, I think it's I love that. And the only other time I may have said no, like when it came to actor overtime. Um, and one needs to be careful with relationships, whether it's with like SAG or with ACTRA, because there are very hard and fast rules. So that union is very serious, and so it should be. I'm very respectful of that. Um, there's one example I'll give you. There was one actor that did stay overtime one time, and I was like, "Are you sure?" Like, and actually, I wrote on the paper that she didn't. But then the next day, I get a call from her agent, who was just really mad, and I totally get why. Um, so, well, there's an example of when I should have said no. And I let that one go, but that has never happened since. So it's just, things to think about, your yeses and your nos, and just being careful.
Definitely. It's a lot of decision making, and it's what you were saying before, is that you're you need to have an overview of everyone's role and an understanding of everyone's role. And if you don't understand it, then you have to do your best to put yourself in their shoes and know what they're asking for. And like you said, speak their language. So I think that those are all really helpful things that you can do because there are so many moving parts and you're ultimately leading the team. And if they're leading into that, their question that I do have is if you could give advice to your younger producer self starting out, when you didn't have all the experience of all the different departments and then the experience of being a producer, what advice would you give to yourself?
That is a hard one. But okay, I would tell myself to not take on more than I can chew. Because, you know, we all, especially as young producers, we get excited and we want to, oh, this is great, I can do this. And you can't do everything. You need to, it's almost like picking a partner, just one at a time. Monogamy. Well, no, it's true. It's, you know, if you start juggling too many projects at once, I think you tend to burn out faster.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
burnt out producer is not a very helpful one. So my advice to myself would have been, or would be, just cool your jets, figure out which project you're going to focus on. That's fine. You know, it doesn't mean that you're turning other opportunities away. It just means that you can focus a little bit and you won't burn yourself out or dry out or anything. Because you need to be there for a project, especially for independent film, right? You can't really be like, oh, no, I've got another meeting down the road. That doesn't help in terms of collaboration with anyone. So yeah, that's my biggest one, I think, is just be very, and also pick the right people to work with and make sure the project or the script is something that you're passionate about.
Definitely.
Yeah, I wouldn't waste time on something just because it felt like an opportunity. So you have to look at the script and then decide if those are people that you would go to the cottage with.
The people that you would go to college with?
I have this thing about like, that's how we sort of assess, okay, would I hang out with him or her at the cottage?
Oh, the cottage. I thought you said college. Yeah, definitely. I love that. No, I love that. Yeah, because that's what it is. It's hanging out at the cottage while working.
It's like a mini marriage, right?
Yes, 100%.
Very, very picky about what is your sort of material. Being very picky about, like, you know, are these people that I want to collaborate with?
Yes.
And then also just knowing, maybe don't take too many things on at once.
Definitely. Because I think that the superpower of the producer is that they are tend to be quite ambitious and passionate about a lot of things and, you know, lots of energy and good at motivating people and getting things done. These are all positives, but the negative side of that is, especially for people starting out, like you said, doing too much and taking on too many things and not being able to discern which projects are the ones that should truly be focused on. And then also there is a learning curve in terms of how to, which types of people you would like to work with. And sometimes when you're starting out, you don't really have a choice. And even sometimes even when you're at, you know, any level of the game, sometimes you don't have a choice about who you work with, and who you go to the cottage with. But I think that those are really important aspects to think about, especially when you're starting out, and at any level, really. And there are sometimes you can control it and sometimes you cannot.
Well, the worst is when you can't control it, but you know it's happening.
Yeah, that's the worst.
And that's where like that sort of anxiety or like that kind of negative energy kind of muster up, and maybe it's almost infectious, right? So
100%.
it affects other people around you. So
Hmm.
that's why, like, for me, it's sort of best to be sure.
Definitely.
I'm a big take a chance, but if your instinct is sort of kind of on the line and you do have that freedom to walk away, I wouldn't say walk away, like don't desert. How about that? Just you don't have to say yes to everything just because it's offered.
Absolutely. 100%. I love it. And is there anything else that you would like to share with us before we sign off today?
No, I don't know. I just thank you again for having me and listening to me. I hope it was helpful.
It was very helpful. I know that our listeners will be thrilled to know what you're up to and to hear about your experiences. So many different experiences and in different parts of the industry, and it's really helpful to share that you're sharing the information, because I truly believe that the more we share and help each other out, the more the industry will thrive, which is what we're all hoping for and aiming for.
Well, for the listeners, like, yeah, I'm more than happy. I have the same spirit that you do in terms of that. And I think because this industry is a little bit smaller, I think we should be helping each other out at every avenue we can. That's why I took you up on this invitation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anneli, and have a wonderful day. And I can't wait to hear what you're up to next.
Yes, we'll be in touch.